This video will cover the fundamentals of the Semi-Sumo Deadlift. We'll teach the lift in three parts. 1, the stance and setup. 2, the execution of the lift. And 3, common errors. And then finally we'll finish with a recap of everything. First, the stance and setup. The first part of the setup is to establish a stance with the heels slightly wider than the shoulders. From this position, the toes will be turned out roughly 45 degrees. There's a bit of room for individual preference on both of these things. Next, you want to take a grip that allows the arms to be straight, meaning locked at the elbows, and the arms vertical. We don't want the hands wider or too close. Next, and the most important part, is to establish a neutral spine. This is the #1 priority of the entire setup, and is critical for safety to start with the neutral spine and retain it throughout the entire set. Next, we want to see the shin bones vertical or nearly vertical, i.e. the knees are pulled back and tension is felt in the hamstrings. Next, we want to see the shoulders directly above the bar, not out in front of it nor behind it. We want to make sure that the shoulders are higher than the hips and the hips are higher than the knees. And lastly, we want the bar to be pulled directly against the legs. We don't want to see any sort of gap between the bar and the shin bones. Next, we'll cover the execution of the lift. Once the stance is set and a neutral spine is established, the abdomen needs to be braced and pressurized to lock the spine into position. Again, a grip is taken that results in the arms being vertical, as well as the elbows being completely locked at all times. At no point should the elbows be allowed to bend. Also note that there should be a controlled pause at the top of each rep, as well as a dead stop on the floor between every rep. Here's a side angle. Note that the abdomen is braced and pressurized to lock the spine into neutral, and that the spine stays neutral at all times. At no point does the spine deviate from its original neutral position. Also note that the shoulders and hips rise together as one unit. Next, we'll cover common errors in the setup. The worst error is to set up with the spine already in flexion, as shown here. A set should never be started with the spine in this position. The risk of injury is high, and this must be avoided at all costs. Remember that in a proper setup, the shoulders should be directly above the bar. In this example, the setup is incorrect because the shoulders are too far in front of the bar. This puts excessive strain on the lower back and reduces the hips and legs' ability to help lift the bar. Here's the opposite problem. The shoulders are now behind the bar due to the hips being too low and the knees too far forward. This position is common from people trying to lift with their legs, but unfortunately it results in poor leverage for the hips and often ends up pulling the lower back into spinal flexion. Remember that the grip on the bar should result in the arms being vertical and parallel. Shown here are examples of poor grips. Too narrow on the top and too wide on the bottom. Next, we'll look at common errors that come up as the bar is being lifted. Even if the setup is correct, these errors can still present themselves. In a correct lift, the bar stays right against the legs at all times. The lat muscles, the biggest muscles in the back, are responsible for keeping the bar pulled against the legs throughout the duration of the lift. One of the most common problems is to allow the bar to drift away from the legs. This is often caused by the lat muscles not being fully engaged, and it results in poor leverage during the lift, as well as excessive strain on the lower back. Another common error is to let the knees drift forward and slide the bar down the thighs. This creates a dangerous situation as the bar passes below the knees with the lifter now in terrible position to support the weight. As discussed several times previously, it's crucial to avoid spinal flexion during the deadlift. Even if the spine starts neutral during the setup, it is of utmost importance that it stays that way throughout the entire set. A change in spinal alignment during a lift is a surefire way to get a back injury. If, at any point during a set, the spine does move into flexion, the set should be terminated immediately to keep the risk of injury as low as possible. Another common error is to allow the hips to rise faster than the shoulders. When this happens, the leg muscles can barely contribute to lifting the weight, resulting in excessive load being put on the lower back. Let's finish by taking another look at proper technique. First and foremost, the spine must remain neutral at all times. Pressurizing and bracing the abdomen will help lock this into place. Second, take the time to set up correctly for every set. The lift will only ever be as good as the setup allows it to be. And third, lift the bar smoothly and evenly, keeping the bar against the legs at all times. Thank you for watching. To find out more about us, visit industrialstrengthgym.com, go to Facebook at industrialstrengthgym, or on Instagram at industrialstrengthgym.